defense mechanisms. We all have them, but you may have no idea how many there are. More than a dozen that can be seen, and probably a circle of friends of your own. Dr. Nick joins us this morning with more. I never knew there were so many.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, and we use them because most of them, well, all of them, they're unconscious. You know, we go back to the days of Freud's psychodynamic theory, and we'll say all these defense mechanisms, you know, or my defenses are up, but we don't realize that they really are real. And probably the one that's most obvious, I think, is denial.
Certainly. And they say, right, that we learn that really in childhood.
Well, yeah, because what a defense mechanism is, basically, it's a way to avoid something that's painful, unwanted thoughts, emotions, or behaviors. So we tend to find a way to push them away with a defense, a wall. Like, oh no, I'm not really 80 years old and can't walk. I'll get back to being 65 again. I mean, there are many examples.
Or the scale may say 250, but I look like I'm 180.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or denying that there's a real problem with alcohol.
Yeah.
Let's say that's one too. And then, of course, the other one real quick is rationalization. I think this would fit rationalization. Oh, yeah. But I love the line. I think it fits. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm Irish.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when we go into the kind of the intellectual world or the cultural world, well, this is not anything bad. It's kind of a way of rationalizing. But then again, they can flow into each other.
Right.
You know, denying, rationalizing.
Is it always a negative?
No, there are a couple of defense mechanisms, particularly that can be very positive, or actually are positive. Sublimation, which Freud talked a lot about.
Well, now you're going to have to go through sublimation for me.
Sublimation is the most obvious is sexual urges that you don't really want to move on. So you go to play the piano, or you know, we'll say, oh, you just need a cold shower.
Okay.
Or I'm going to sublimate it by running or by cooking. It's taking something that we don't want to do, and we do something else. Now, and that can be constructive and can be conscious. That can be conscious. We can be actually feeling it and saying, no, I don't want to do that. The other one, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you.
Then compensation is, you know, what is it? I can't cook, but I'll do the dishes.
Right.
I'll compensate for what I don't do well by doing something maybe better.
Right, and that and sublimation are good, healthy examples.
Sure.
There is another denial, which is not in the healthy category, and I've heard this expression a lot, but I don't think I understand it, and it's called projection.
Projection. When we don't want to accept what we're experiencing or feeling, we put it onto someone else.
Give me an example.
Gosh, that's such a racist attitude, when I may not be wanting to look at my racist attitude.
Okay.
Or you're making, how in the world, we see this a lot in politics right now, where Republicans projecting on Democrats, Democrats projecting on Republicans, and we sit back and say, we're both doing it. But we don't want to admit it, so we project. We put it on someone else.
Is it kind of like me think they protest too much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that would be a little bit closer to reaction formation, which is really a fascinating one that we don't talk a whole lot about.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
All right. Well, let me give you a great example, and I'm not knocking preachers, but let's say you've got a pastor that's always preaching against alcohol, and we find out later that he's been drinking every night behind closed doors. Do you hear the reaction formation? I mean, that's the phrase, but it's really me thinketh he protesteth too much.
Yes.
When somebody is putting something down that much, you got to wonder what's going on.
Yeah. Is that something in you that you hate about yourself? Correct.
Yeah. Yes. And
so therefore
but you condemn it. By condemning it, you think you're pushing it away, and which is really kind of starting to get close to disassociation, which is another one, and compartmentalization. I mean, they all kind of run together, Whitney, where we just kind of make compartments or dissociate. But one that I think is really interesting is regression. Regression, when we go back to childhood feelings. And let me give you the example that I love to use to people. When families have reunions and they'll go back to their childhood home, they'll often come out saying, gosh, it wasn't right. I feel like I regressed. I feel like I went back to being a kid again.